another episode of Mood for Feud. I'm your host Katya, and today I am in the mood to discuss Shannen Doherty feuds, and joining me I have my beautiful, gorgeous mum. How's it going, mum?
Hi everybody.
Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm 50. I'm Libran. We don't like feuds. We like peace and harmony, and we don't do conflicts, so we always run away from them. So we have these unresolved sort of issues. But this is why I love Mood for Feud, because I get to get the juicy goss on everybody else's feuds that we can't do.
I'd say you are also really into pop culture yourself. You're pretty good at keeping up to date with all the current events and stuff. And
yeah, I think so. I don't like all the women's weekly mags and stuff, but I love what comes on socials. Like TikTok educates me on all the hot goss in Hollywood and celebs. And I don't even know half the influencers, but I get so invested sometimes in all their dramas, and I go down the TikTok rabbit hole. So, yeah.
I think that's really cool. I think that's something that's really beautiful about TikTok that people don't talk about very often, at least I think. It gives that kind of bridge, I guess, between two different generations, or you and I have conversations all the time about topics that pop up on our TikTok feeds, and it just bridges that kind of gap. And probably, I don't want to generalize, but maybe other people in your age bracket might be more drawn to those gossip magazines like Women's Weekly and stuff, which are often actually not even filled with real information, whatever. And I'm not saying that TikTok is either, but you get more of a holistic perspective, I guess, or you get to hear what people who aren't journalists or aren't reporters, what they're saying about situations. Yeah,
I'd have to agree with that.
So when I floated the idea for Mum to guest on an episode, I asked her to choose a topic for us to cover. So why Shannen Doherty? What made you pick these feuds as a topic?
Well, I was just thinking back to what kind of feuds were in the tabloids when I was in high school. What did we talk about in the classroom after watching an episode? And it was the 90210. It came out in in the 90s. I know, I watched it in the 90s. And I was 16, so getting into all that juicy drama type thing of high school. And yeah, the show just was really appealing for me. And so I thought, actually, I do recall seeing online and in the mags and things about all this beef that Shannen would have with other celebrities. And so when Kasia thought, what kind of feuds were big back in the day? And that one popped into my mind.
It was really interesting for me to look into this because I didn't have as much info on Shannen Doherty, I guess. And I didn't know a lot of the ins and outs. I knew about the drama on Charmed, the TV show, and then that was kind of it. I didn't actually know that much about her, so it was really interesting to kind of look into it. So I guess when you were in school, was it tricky to get information or celebrity goss like that? Because I think about now, I just go on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and I just have so much info about all the celebs and got a million paparazzi videos to watch. But what was that like? Where were you getting your info from? Was it just passed around at school, or how did you all get your info back then?
Well, first of all, there was no internet, so we couldn't even quickly do a Google search or drag up some other shit from online that we could pull back from, because there was no internet. You had to rely purely on what the women's magazines, the gossip mags were writing. Also the teeny bopper mags, I can't even remember what they were called, but I could only afford to buy some of them. And so I'd always be in the nose of my friends' ones who had them. I had one friend who literally bought every single episode of Women's Weekly so we could look up the shit. So I literally can't remember what the teen magazine was that we had, but I just remember rushing to school and before class and everyone's just pouring over these magazines. So yeah, that's how we got our goss, because we're the generation without internet and Instagram and TikTok where you can dig up some, well, I don't know, you just feel like you have a better a closer connection with celebrities through those mediums.
Yeah, and I'd say that's like for better and for worse, because I do think that we know way too much about our celebrities nowadays. But I agree, it would have been so tricky to hear all this gossip or figure out what's actually happening, because you're fully relying on just these magazines who each all have their own little agenda anyway, or like are getting paid by people, whatever. So
yeah, but back then it was all true. Nobody got paid.
You don't think that was happening back then?
No, of course it was happening.
Yeah.
But we were just like so invested, so gullible.
So there wasn't that kind of critical conversation happening at the same time of like, you know, why do we think they're printing this, or...
Oh, absolutely not. I literally cannot recall the teen magazine because my sister used to buy them as well, and we would get the celeb posters out of the centerfold and like hang them in our rooms.
Well, I thought we'd go in true Mood for Feud fashion, talk a little bit about Shannen's upbringing and how she came into acting, and then we can discuss some of her feuds from the 90210. Sorry, I need to say Beverly Hills 90210 because 90210 was a separate show afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking about the OG Beverly Hills 90210.
I forgot that it was called that.
Yeah, that was the original TV show name. Yeah. And then we'll go into a little bit about her drama on Charmed as well, and then we'll wrap it up. And I'm interested to know if you knew a lot about Shannen Doherty and her life and the feuds she was involved in, or if you were, you know, witnessing it in real time like Mum. Yeah, interested to know all of your thoughts. Make sure you slide into my DMs at Mood for Feud. So, Shannen Doherty was born April 12, 1971 in Memphis, Tennessee, and this makes her an Aries, and I was like, oh, immediately that just tracks. Like, I need to make a chart. I've been saying this for so long, but I need to track which star sign features the most on this podcast, but I feel like Aries is always popping up, and it's that fire sign energy, I reckon.
Yeah, they like good fight.
Yeah.
Fiesty.
And that's kind of the energy I got from Shannen, just like reading through her life and everything. There were so many times where it seems like she might have just had a bit of a shorter fuse, or like was just a bit more reactive than other people, or less tolerant maybe as well. But she got into acting when she was really young. At age 7, her family relocated to LA because the dad was opening a new branch of the family transportation business. I guess being in LA, it's quite natural that she just started acting. I couldn't find really whether... It sounds like it was her decision to get into it, which I found really interesting. I for sure thought, as with most child actors, there was push from the parents. But at just 10, she debuts in her first role, which was for a show called Father Murphy, created by Michael Landon. Did you ever watch Father Murphy?
Oh, yeah. My parents watched Father Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't have a choice.
So you watched Father Murphy too.
So, yeah, we had to watch that too.
I watched some clips of her in the show. She's pretty cute, like as far as child actors go. And I always think that child actors in the 80s are somehow so much better than child actors now. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually agree with you.
Yeah. Right? I don't... What is it? Is it just because...
I just feel they had like less exposure on a worldwide scale, so you could be a nobody one day and then you could be a celebrity just through internet so quickly. And you know, and I just think back then it was really wholesome. Like, they didn't realize how big they were or how cute they were.
A little bit more guarded, maybe, or sheltered from that, so maybe a little bit less self-aware when acting.
I think so.
Yeah. I know, I was thinking about this the other day, just even movies like Stand By Me and stuff that relied solely on child actors to carry a film that adults would watch. And I was struggling to think if that could be made today, have that same kind of impact. But yeah, she was great in her role, and she was actually so good that Michael Landon, the creator of the show, he was also starring on Little House in the Prairie.
Oh, Little House in the Prairie. Oh, yeah. We watched that too.
Yeah, he was starring on that at the time, and because he knew Shannen could act really well from Father Murphy, he created a role for her in Little House on the Prairie. or at least that's the rumor, is that he asked for a role for her to be made specifically so that they could cast her in the show. And that's how she got to play the role of Jenny Wilder on Little House on the Prairie at age 11, which, like, again, super
and she
impressive.
was cute.
Super cute, very good at acting again. And I watched an interview, her first E.T. interview from 1982, and it kind of made me laugh because I kind of related to her a little bit. But she's 11 years old and she's already so intense about her career and like is already taking her acting super seriously. Like this isn't to her just a fun little hobby. Yeah, no, she's like, no, I'm an actor. Like this is my job. There was one quote from it that I pulled where they were sort of asking her like, oh, but you obviously work a lot more than other kids your age and maybe you don't get to play as much as them. And she said, I have time for myself, so it's okay with me. Plus, this is my life. This is what I want to do. So it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters except my mom, my dad, and my brother. This is my life and this is my career when I grow up.
Wow. Yeah. So mature.
And that's her at 11 already. She's like, no, this is for me. And she does mention that there are a lot of kids she works with who are basically pushed to be there by their parents. And obviously this is something we talk about all the time on Mood for Feud, about how ethical it is to have child actors and, you know, yada yada, and all the exploitation that comes with it. But as far as I could tell, it seems like she had a great time. I don't know. She said all her money goes into a trust fund, so her parents don't actually... I don't know why she was telling the reporter all this. Yeah, she made it really clear that her mum's always saying, like, if you don't want to do this anymore, we can just stop.
Yeah.
I found that interesting. And that's probably not the experience of most child actors. At age 15, she did another interview on the Today Show, and she says her biggest ambition is to be a serious actress, not so much a celebrity. So it like wasn't about the fame for her. Like she truly just wanted to be an actor. And this is something else I found really interesting because later on when we talk about some of her feuds and her public image in the tabloids, there was this sentiment in the tabloids at the time that her bad reputation or her party girl persona and always going out getting drunk, whatever, was to garner fame and attention.
Oh, yeah.
At least at 15, she was pretty adamant that's not, you know, why she was into this. What was your perception of her at the time in the 90s?
Well, I liked her. I liked her character on the show because she was a child in Little House on the Prairie. And while I could relate to, you know, this house full of like this family situation, because I grew up in a big family, and so that was relatable to me. Like this family had lots of kids in it from my memory. But I don't know, I just love the fact that she was a twin, because I'm not a twin, and I don't know, I just have this feeling that twins live this like amazing life where they can read each other's minds, and I have a sister who's really close to my age, and we would often like pretend we were twins, but not twins. So her character was quite appealing for me in that sense, that they were coming from like just an ordinary life in Minnesota to like the Beverly Hills, you know, and who isn't interested in that age, in Beverly Hills and rich kids and the OC. So her character for me was the lovable one entering like this den full of like Beverly Hills rich kids, bratty kids, and that's probably what was appealing for me at the time.
I guess your recollection of your feelings and stuff towards her are more linked to the character she was playing.
Yeah, positively. Yeah. That, because that was, I think that's when I actually really properly got to know her as a like playing a high schooler, or I don't know what age that is. So it was relatable for me. And
that's also interesting because, like you mentioned before, you didn't have all this access to celebrities and all this info about them. So probably for a long time, your perception of Shannen Doherty was just the character she played on screen.
Yeah,
because you're not getting her on like Instagram Live talking to you, you know.
No, and we don't get all the nitty gritty unless it's what the paparazzi have shown us. Like, it's not like someone secretly filmed her on their phone and uploaded it into the internet, and that's the side of her I get to see. You don't get to see all that part of it. It's not. Her persona in the series is the only one that I kind of really know. other than maybe if someone did an interview with her in these teen mags. But, you know, it's just like, oh, what's your favourite blah blah blah. It's so superficial and you don't actually really know a lot about them, but that was enough to feed our curiosity back then. I don't know, I just feel like kids these days,
here we go.
they were given this teen magazine, they'll be going like, what is this crap? This tells me nothing.
We do demand like way more info about our celebrities, and it's actually to a point where we cross so many boundaries with people now, because we know where they live, we know what their house looks like, we watch them on Architectural Digest doing a here's my entire home, and then we watch their Vogue Get Ready With Me and we know every single skincare product they're using. Like, this is an abnormal amount of info to know about someone. Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about Beverly Hills 90210. So Shannen was cast in this show in 1990 when the show started, and I think she was, let me do maths, 19, should have been 19 at the time. You alluded to it a little bit, but I guess I'll just give a recap in case people haven't seen the show. It's a teen drama basically about a group of friends living in Beverly Hills, and as Mum mentioned, especially in season 1, you kind of see the show through the perspective of Shannen's character Brenda and her twin brother Brandon, and they're these kids who relocate to Beverly Hills from Minnesota, and they are maybe a little bit naive or not exposed to the happenings of the rich kid life in Beverly Hills, and so we kind of get to see this culture shock through their perspective. And then I should also say the show was produced by Aaron Spelling, and it also starred Aaron's daughter, Tori Spelling, who played Donna. And then the other main female character, I would say, is Jenny Garth's character, which was Kelly. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah. I think that may have been most people's, like, choice of favorite character on there, because, you know, she's the popular girl, you know, she gets the guy. So yeah,
she's blonde,
she's blonde.
I watched a couple clips, so she seemed like the kind of blonde popular girl, and then Brenda, played by Shannen, was the like dark haired, like doesn't know,
nice girl,
innocent, isn't from this walk of life, I guess. When we first started talking about 90210, Beverly Hills 90210, I thought it might have been a bit similar to maybe something like Gossip Girl, where we're also watching a group of friends, rich kids living in New York in the Upper East Side. But after I watched a couple more clips on YouTube and stuff, I felt like it was actually a bit more like Degrassi, because it also seemed to touch on a lot of heavier social topics like homophobia and racism and, you know, unplanned pregnancies.
Yeah, really real sort of situations. Yeah. Like for me at that age.
Whereas Gossip Girl was a bit more ridiculous, I guess, in the sense where the issues were like, my boyfriend traded me for a hotel. It's a little bit like less. Whereas I think Degrassi was another show that touched on these like topics that teens were experiencing, or maybe knew someone who was experiencing that. Do you remember any like standout episodes or standout storylines where you were like, oh, whoa, like that? Well, it's really memorable for me.
I think in every good series there's always a bad boy. And so Dylan was the bad boy, super hunky, super handsome, rode a motorbike, ditched school, like, you know, every goody two-shoes dream of like a picture book bad boy. So I just remember a lot of it was this love triangle thing between Jenny Garth and Shannen with Dylan. He was kind of like somebody who they both wanted, like, so Kelly, who was like popular and rich, and, you know, I thought most of those girls would like to date jocks and like the football team, but no, she wanted the bad boy. And then there's this innocent new kid on the block, and she's like got the eyes for him as well, which is like, oh, she's a good girl, and, you know, she's chasing Dylan on the show. So yeah, I think a lot of the eps that I remember mostly was that sort of friction between those characters. And another theme that popped up at the time as well was, I'm not too sure which character it was, but I can see her face, but I can't remember her name. And she had this unplanned pregnancy, and they were very young, and they don't know what to do and whether to keep the baby or not. And scandal.
Yes, I looked up some clips of Dylan as well. He was played by Luke Perry, and it was so interesting because I will admit I've only seen Luke Perry playing Archie's dad on Riverdale.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably only know Luke Perry is old.
So it was like kind of nice to see, like, oh, he was kind of,
he was
like,
hot.
Yeah, like, and it's so interesting because I was like, whoa, he looks so much like, I can see resemblance to KJ Apa, who plays his son in Riverdale. I was like, oh, I get the casting choice there now, because yeah, when he was younger, he kind of had the same, like, I don't know, smoldering look. I don't know how to
and you talk
describe
about
it.
Gossip Girls and Riverdale, and I haven't even
idea.
seen those.
Wow, you can definitely skip Riverdale. That's not worth watching. And you'll probably be sad to just see Luke Perry playing, like, a dad. Would you say this was, like, the biggest TV show in your high school era, or was this the one that everyone was watching?
Yeah, I think so. There's not another program that comes to mind other than Shannen Doherty, but I don't think you can compare. I can't think of another standout one, but this is the one that I just remember that, you know, we watched religiously every time it came on, and I think it only screened like one ep a week. It was really just painful to wait a whole entire week for the next episode. Not like kids these days. You just stream it on pirate sites and you just watch a whole season in one day. It's so lucky.
I can't imagine having to wait a whole week for an episode, because even when shows come out weekly, I just wait for them to all be out and then I can just binge them.
But we couldn't.
No, yeah, you couldn't do that.
And if you missed it, if you did not have that VHS recorder ready to record the episode, you just missed out.
That's so nuts. But I think it is nice because I find less and less these days that people are watching the same show at the same time in that way. There's so many shows on streaming, so the chances that you're watching the same show as your friend and, you know, you're up to the same episode as well, that's like slim to none. Even though you were forced to stick to that TV schedule, at least when you went to school, you knew everyone was up to date, everyone was watching it, you know, everyone was in the same boat as you, I guess.
Yeah, the only spoilers we got really in some of our shows is someone who travelled overseas. God. Like we had one girl who came back from America and she just had, I don't know, it was like so cruel. She had watched these eps that we hadn't seen, so yeah.
Well, I found out maybe a year ago that like tapes of TV shows used to literally get like physically transported to other countries.
Yes.
So can you imagine waiting for a tape recording from America to reach New Zealand?
Yeah, that's for the people who couldn't wait for the next ep and they had family or friends or someone they knew who would record it and send it over. Yeah, and they got to watch it ahead because like, ooh, I'm the popular one who gets to know what
gets to know the spoilers. Yeah. The show was also super successful. It ran for 10 years, which I think is a decent amount of time. It was also rebooted in 2008 as 90210.
Oh, yeah.
Different from Beverly Hills.
Yeah, that was so crazy when they put the show back and they were all a lot older.
And Shannen Doherty did go back to reprise her role as Brenda in the reboot as well. And then it had another reboot in 2019, which was co-created by Jenny Garth and Tori Spelling. They brought it back, and it was called BH 90210.
Oh, okay. You see, that I had stopped watching because I didn't even know that they tried to reboot that show.
It only lasted one season. Yeah, I don't know. I think people liked the first episode, and then it just never took off. And also that same year, 2019, is when Luke Perry passed away. And so I think that all of that, like, he was missing from the reboot, and it all just really,
you know, some things are just best left to lie.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when they had it in the prime of when that show was such a hit, some things you should just leave with that memory rather than try to revive it.
I think it's really, really hard to make a successful reboot because you're playing to a different audience, and also the people who do remember the original, they will have all of these like glamorized memories of what it was like to watch the original show. Also because, you know, in the case of this, you would have been 16. Like, you're just a completely different person now if you try to, you know, watch a reboot.
You know, I'm a mother and I have children and I'm living a real life. And so I don't need to watch these people's lives anymore. And I don't even think I was fully invested in the 90210 after it returned. I think I was just super excited because there was some nostalgia there of high school, and I tried to watch it, but it was like, oh, I was out partying. I have no time to sit at home watching this program. So,
for sure.
Or even maybe I'd already had Katia. She was taking up all my time. So
I think you might have already. That was 2008, so you would have already had both your kids. You were like.
I do remember going back to watch it.
Yeah.
When they released it, just because I was so curious, and it was just a core memory coming back and wanting to feel that again, but it wasn't the same, obviously, grown up.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like I've never watched a single High School Musical reboot, and I think it's a similar thing because it's not going to hit the same, it's not going to be what I want it to be. But yeah, so the show ran for 10 years, and I think fairly quickly there were a lot of rumors coming out about a lot of on-set drama, particularly between the girls in the main cast. And Shannen later in life actually started a podcast, and she would bring a lot of the 90210 guests onto her show and just like rehash some of these like feuds and tensions on set or whatever. In her episode with Brian Austin Green, she recalled that the guys always seemed to get on really well together, and to her, the girls always had a lot of like tension and competitiveness between them. And I pulled one of her quotes where she said, "I recall when tension started happening on the set, and it was always awesome to me that the boys got along so well. You guys were always very supportive of each other and congratulating each other, and it wasn't necessarily the same with girls." And this is something that is not unique to this show either. I think there's a lot of TV shows where you find out like, oh, the women in the cast don't like each other. I'm thinking of like Desperate Housewives, or Sex and the City was like another one where, you know, it's like, oh, there's like tensions on set. Why do you think it's always the girls, or why do you think there's this extra pressure to be in competition with one another?
Because it's the same. I think you covered like some dramas in Fifth Harmony. You know, it's like girls are just so bitchy, and guys are just not that deep. If they're upset about something, they just have a little punch up and then get on with it. Whereas girls can be quite conniving, drag shit out, hold grudges. I think, just the competitiveness as well. They just need to always be like the favourite one, the most popular one, the one that's the most in the tabloids. I think there would have been like a lot of comparisons. And just with Kelly and Brenda, Shannen and Jenny's characters in the show, you know, they were pining for the same guy. Brenda was quite jealous because Jenny was very popular and things like that. And so I don't know whether some of that kind of like bleeds into real life, but that's kind of like what it felt like. And so it wasn't such a big surprise that there was feuding, but we're like, oh my gosh, because that type of feuding for us back in the day was massive. Nothing like the types of feuding and, you know, just the pettiness. The level of pettiness today is off the charts.
I think that's a really good point that you brought up about the fact that a lot of these characters were also in competition with one another. And I'm thinking back to your earlier comment where you were saying how for a long time your perception of Shannen Doherty was just what you saw on TV with her playing Brenda. And so I do think that there's a chance where, you know, seeing these two characters in competition with one another just naturally extrapolates into people also drawing comparisons between the women playing these characters. I was going to ask, like, how much do you think of that comparison or, you know, pitting them against one another was like tabloid driven and just the media wanting like a juicy story?
Oh, of course. I think it also helped the show that in real life this was happening alongside the plot lines to the show. So, it just kept us all wanting to have more juicy goss. Who would want to read more or find out more if they all just kind of got along? That's how they make the money on these things. But yeah, I just think in that show in particular, I think some of the characters actually took on those personas, I just felt, and took it into their real lives just by default. And just with the public expecting that of them, and not and us being like so delusional that we ourselves as audiences couldn't really separate the two. So if Kelly did something horrible on the show, I guess it's the same probably even today. People are just like so out of touch with reality that they
can't separate the actor from the character. I think it's less common now, but definitely 10-15 years ago. I mean, I'm thinking of Joffrey, the actor who played Joffrey on Game of Thrones, receiving death threats walking down the street. I watched a TikTok the other day, someone talking about Joey from Shortland Street.
That guy keeps on going.
Who played a serial killer, and people seeing him walking down the street and being like, oh my gosh, it's a serial killer.
Like even still now?
No, back when it aired, which would have been in the 2000s. So I think it happens less now, but there was definitely there was a period of time where people were struggling to separate that. And I think part of it is that this is the only time you ever see these people, is when they're playing this character.
Yes.
And this actually is really interesting to me as well, because I was trying to pull up old articles and tabloids of Shannen Doherty, and there were quite a lot talking about how even though Brenda was the most well-liked character at the start of the show, that there were a couple storylines that maybe portrayed her in a bad light, and the public perception shifted on not just Brenda's character but also on Shannen as well at the same time, where people went from really liking her to absolutely hating Brenda's character.
Yep.
Do you remember that arc playing out?
I do remember, I can't remember the specifics, but I do remember a time where the more her character developed, the more I disliked her.
Yeah, that's what a lot of these articles were saying.
Yeah,
exactly
so, it just got too much. Like, she was trying too hard, and she was just being really annoying and really indecisive. I'm a Libra.
Which is you. Yeah, I was just going to say.
Being really indecisive, and it's probably why I could identify with her. They drove a shitty car that broke down all the time, because all their friends had like convertibles and stuff. I had a shitty car and I paid with my own money. I do remember it starting off where I was like such a fan, and then I can't remember specifics, but I did kind of go off of her as her character developed.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was reading online, and it actually got to the point where this might not have made its way to New Zealand, but there was an American I Hate Brenda newsletter where they just like posted all this shit about the character Brenda, like reporting on her like as if she's
the fact that it's a newsletter tells you guys like
yeah,
what era we're in.
On top of that, those same people also made a Shannen Snitch hotline where people could call in and basically report, bad encounters with Shannen, or like really 90s level vitriol. Where they're like, we're going to make a newsletter and a phone line. Take that, Shannen Doherty.
Where people can ring in and snitch if they've seen you being a bitch somewhere.
Yeah, literally, that was the whole point, was like crew members could be like, oh, she's difficult to work with. But I found that so interesting because, you compare that vitriol to like what Meghan Markle went through, for example, in the internet, and it's just it's not even the same kind of scale. But that did really surprise me, that there was this really intense hatred, I guess, not just for Brenda, her character, but also for Shannen as well.
I think it's like when you fall in love with this like goody two shoes and she turns out to be a bitch, and it's like, you.
Yeah.
And so the hate seems to be more because of your disappointment, you know, who you presume.
Because she was good girl gone bad
Yeah.
rather than always bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Or bad gone good.
Yeah.
You still win.
Yeah.
You forgot that scenario.
Yeah, bad gone good. Also a winner.
Yeah, also a winner. But, yeah.
Should we go into some of the like specifics of her fights? I've pulled stories of feuding between her and Jenny Garth and her and Tori Spelling as well. Okay, let's talk about the drama between her and Tori Spelling. So Tori also came on Shannon's podcast and they were discussing like, you know, why they were fighting, and they actually couldn't even pin it down to a single scenario or anything. So I do think, like you were saying, it was just like a product of the environment of being in competition with one another. But Shannon did say to Tori that her perception was that Tori was always quite easily swayed. So I guess if someone was in her ear like, oh, you know, Shannon, what a bitch, blah, 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 she would just like instantly change her mind to believe that person, which was quite frustrating for her, I guess. Shannon also said that Tori's boyfriend at the time was like super abusive, and so she was trying to get her to break things off with him, and so he became like another point of contention for them, I guess. So it actually, to me, it just sounded a lot like just regular friendship fights that you would have with anyone, and it wasn't necessarily, as the tabloids would have it, that Shannon was this like outright malicious bitch who just couldn't get along with anyone. I think it was really interesting because I pulled a quote from Tori in the episode, and she said, I think when I was young, it was whoever was the alpha more at the moment would sway me, and I think I couldn't stand up for myself. That's a really sad quote as well, I thought, because it's horrible to think that you don't have a like moral grounding, that you're just pulled into whatever stories the most alpha person is telling you at the time. But it made me wonder, like from her saying that, it sounded like maybe there were even like teams forming on set, you know, and you had the people who liked Shannon and then the people who didn't, and it just sounds like there was a lot of intermixing. I don't know, this seems very like high school feuding to me though.
Oh yeah, it was high school just bitching, you know. I mean, it just sounds really pathetic when you think of, you know, at the time you're so invested in it, and then you grow up and you look back on it and you're like, well, that wasted energy over high school dramas. But yeah, with Tori, I reckon because her dad had created the series, that always puts her in a really tricky position. You know, you could always try to manipulate through her to her dad, who's the director of and the producer of a show. So even if you didn't particularly like her, you'd still not want to be in her bad books because it could affect like your position on the show. I mean, I don't know, but her character on the show was very much like that, and I feel like her person in her real life was pretty much like that. Possibly, you know, due to her dad being the director, and so whoever could shout the loudest. I don't think she's somebody who does conflicts. It'll be interesting to see what her star sign is. But
Tori Spellings?
Yeah.
She's what? Do you have a guess? I'm gonna guess she's an air sign based on all of that. What is that? No, she's an earth sign. She's a Taurus. Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting that.
Interesting.
Sorry, what were you saying there?
But I think, you know, that's probably just what we were fed at the time, you know, and without internet, you're enslaved to what the media feed you, because there are no other avenues where you can find information. And look how wrong I probably have just analysed that whole situation, because at first when the show started and I started to notice, oh yeah, her dad's the thing, I just thought like, oh, she probably is the playmaker in there,
nepo baby, like
yeah.
She's like the principal's daughter, type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
everybody wants to be her
strings.
friend, but she's actually not a very nice person, and so, you know, you can only eat what you're fed.
I also thought she would have been more of a like power player maybe in the feuding, but based on her conversations with Shannon, it seemed like she was actually just a pawn, and everyone was trying to like win her over for their own agenda, which is really sad.
Your analogy of like the principal's daughter, it's the mark. Like, it's not even popularity, it's like fake popularity.
Yeah, it's like,
so when you leave school, that all goes. because there's nothing left to gain from...
Did she do anything outside of... Because I know that she was part of the reboot, the 2008 reboot, and then obviously she co-created the one-season reboot in 2019 as well. Do you think she was a bit stuck maybe in that role or in that character?
I think so. I think to her detriment, yes. I don't even recall her on another show, to be honest.
And then another story that was quite circulated was about Shannon's feud with Jenny Garth, which actually went a bit physical, which I couldn't believe because so there are actually a lot of stories that Shannen would like get into brawls and stuff on a night out. Like I think she was like a hold my hoops kind of girl, like which I think comes back to her Aries star sign.
I think in her intensity, like,
yes,
you
and
know,
her intensity.
Aries are so intense, and you know, it's like ride or die situations with them. This is what I mean, the shift from good girl sort of like ending up where she is, and then you know the tabloids when they report, or the paparazzi when they report on those sorts of things, you're like going, I knew she was fake good.
Oh, like you join in the like...
Yeah, in the witch hunt.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, yeah, feisty. We didn't associate it with star signs back then, but so interesting how you look into people's backgrounds based on their star sign, and you're like, oh my gosh, you can see how they parallel or correlate to each other because they're the same star sign.
I know, and I know some people are like, oh, star signs are bullshit, blah blah blah, and like they probably are, but I think it's silly. It's less inquisitive to ignore another knowledge set instead of just like bringing it in. I can research all the, you know, bloody blah stuff about her, where she grew up, what her parents did for work, but why would I also just ignore what star sign she is? Like, and the fact that we prescribe meaning to star signs means that even subconsciously you might be portraying some of those characteristics because you know you're the star sign, so it all just like feeds into it. I always see like meaning in someone's star sign.
I think it can't be ignored, especially now. I always look, it sounds so lame, but I always check people's star sign, especially like I meet a new friend.
Gotta check.
Oh, when is your birthday? Oh, what star sign are you?
Yeah, so apparently her physical fight with Jenny Garth started on set because Jenny was known for doing these pranks, which this just shows the like maturity level on set. But Jenny had this thing where she would announce like pants down day, and she would like pants different crew members, and like some people found it funny, but most of them would get really annoyed, which is like, yeah, I'm here to like hold a boom or whatever, and now I'm getting pantsed. Like that would be so annoying. And so I guess to like switch the tables up a bit, Shannen decided to do skirt up day, and she pulled Jenny's skirt up, and she said that Jenny always wore boxers, so like she didn't think it would be anything that serious or whatever. But Jenny got really upset over it, and then this is how that fight broke out. And it got so bad that two of the guys, Ian and Brian Austin Green, I don't know Ian's last name. Brian Austin Green and Ian had to like go and break it up. And then Tori Spelling apparently called her dad and like told him about the fight. So there we go. Yeah, we've got the like info feeding back to the show's producer. Tori did recall this moment in a 2015 interview, and she said she felt like she was part of something, a movement that cost someone their livelihood. And that's because shortly after this, Shannen Doherty's character was written off the show. Yeah, I found her comment there like a movement so cynical, because it seems like maybe all of this negativity towards Brenda's character and towards Shannen in the press kind of like circled back to how her castmates were feeling about her, and it did create this notion that Shannon's a troublemaker on set, she's harmful to production, she's harmful to other cast members, and it all just bubbled up. But for Tori to have that introspection and go, actually I feel like I was part of a movement of something that I didn't realize I was part of, it just makes it seem like there was some like, I don't know, something bigger at play there. I feel like we're not getting all the pieces, because it seems like everyone feels like a bit of a pawn. So who was the mastermind?
Like I said, I'm just going to draw back again on like the characters that people play in a series or in film. And, you know, if you're portrayed as the mean girl, that kind of seeps into reality. you know, the popular girl, mean girl, the girl who says and everybody jumps type thing. So
you think naturally they assumed those roles in their
in real life. And so it's funny when Jenny does it, but when Shannen does it, it's not funny. You know, it's like not okay.
Those double standards.
The double standards. So yeah, that's kind of sad. Look at how many can't go off topic. Look at how many on-screen romances and marriage breakups happen because of chemistry. And chemistry on set is so powerful, you know?
That's a really good point, because I won't lie, when you were like, I reckon that some of that bled into their personal lives, I was like, what? They couldn't tell the difference between playing pretend in real life. But you're right, look at how many people play romantic characters and then end up falling in love or having an affair afterwards. So why can't the same thing be said about like friendship dynamics as well?
You know, and they're all young, and the young sort of, you know, pettiness can come out in real life situations, which sadly for Shannen cost her livelihood. You know, and for someone, I think it's quite sad, but for someone who's so passionate about acting and being an actress in that career and how much it would have meant to her, it would have been totally guttering for her.
Yeah, exactly. She was very much in it for the craft of being an actor rather than like, I want to be famous. She reminds me a bit of Zendaya in that sense. I feel like Zendaya is another actor who is an actor and doesn't see herself as like a celebrity.
Which I think the word or the term celebrity is so misused now, just through influencing and things like that. Content creators, they're on this type of level of stardom or celebrityism, but like they haven't really done anything of value or of substance, like playing a character. And
you can be a celebrity for anything. It doesn't even have to be tied to your job. So in 1994, Shannen is written off the show, and by this time the main public sentiment was she's a troublemaker. There were also a lot of reports about her behavior on set, the fact that she would quite often show up late and just wasn't seemingly taking her job seriously, which again surprised me because of her intensity. And in 2019, Shannen actually talked about this in an interview with People magazine, and she was saying that, you know, she was late to set a lot of times and no one ever asked her why that was, and that the reality was at the time she had a husband who was a drug addict and who was also quite violent, and she had all these tensions about not wanting to leave the home because that would be when he'd go out and get more drugs. She also had her dad in hospital and he was super sick, so sometimes she was just getting caught up. She did say like part of it was her own fault because she didn't like communicate any of this to the producers or to her castmates, and so they just saw her showing up late all the time, and that in hindsight she obviously didn't have to tell them all the nitty gritty, but just tell them something's going on, you know. But again, that's like a level of maturity there of opening up in that way. She said there was a lot of misunderstanding, I guess, around why she wasn't showing up or why she wasn't there. And she also talked about this with Jason Priestley, and he was like shocked to hear that's what she was going through.
That's her level of professionalism, I guess. You know, you don't take your stuff to work,
I guess, but like to her detriment though, because everyone just thought she was lazy and thought she was better than everyone and didn't need to be there on time.
That's true.
So I guess you could argue it was also unprofessional. But that was something that really shocked him. And this is like, Jason Priestley played her brother on the show. Like they would have had so many scenes together, and even that kind of close castmate, you know, had no idea about all these things happening behind the scenes. So I thought that was really interesting. But it was a big deal, her getting written off that show, and a lot of people thought that it was going to be career ending for her as well, to lose out on that, and especially because the show went on for another 6 years as well without her. But she did get cast in another show, and this is what I found interesting. She got cast in Charmed, obviously, which was also produced by Aaron Spelling. So I'm like, how much of a drama could she have been on set for him to recast her in a new project?
Yeah, people are allowed to get a second chance.
I know, but the way that the tabloids were making it out was like she's
a troublemaker.
Yeah, she's like this hurricane of destruction. And I'm like, well, it couldn't have been all that bad because actually the producer hires her again.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that doesn't always happen in Hollywood. Like sometimes it's a one and done situation and now you're blacklisted and no one's going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. So again, I feel like there was an element of everything kind of being amped up by the tabloids.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we strip back to the facts, someone who has monetary stakes in the success of a show is still willing to cast her again.
Yeah.
You know?
True.
Did you watch Charmed? Or not really?
I think I was getting too old for those kind of series. I do remember watching like a few eps because I think you guys were watching it.
Yeah, I watched it. I mean, it came out, I would have been watching it not in real time. It came out in 1998. But I have seen like the odd episode and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, you couldn't have been. And how long did that show run for?
Oh.
Because I know...
Don't ask me questions, I ask you questions.
No, because I know somebody was watching it, like was totally invested in it. And I remember sitting down to watch it and thinking like, oh, there's Brenda from 90210.
1998 to 2006.
Oh yeah.
So again, ran for another quite successful show. I did used to watch like reruns of it, but I wasn't watching it in real time.
Might have been my younger sister.
So she was cast as one of the three witch sisters. This show to me is like the same as Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like I put them in kind of the same eras.
I think so.
Of like 90s, late 90s, like Supernatural.
Because I wasn't into Buffy either. I feel like I was getting too old for those TV series.
Yeah, true. Because I guess, well, actually, by the time Charmed came out, you were a mom.
Yeah.
You probably weren't watching any TV.
And by the time it ended, I had 2 children.
Yeah.
I had no time for television.
So she played one of 3 witch sisters alongside Alyssa Milano and Holly Marie Combs. And again, very quickly after the show started airing, there were all these rumors about feuding on set. So I almost feel like all of her track record and whatever from Beverly Hills 90210 just got transferred over
poor
into
girl.
Charmed. Yeah, which does suck because, you know, she would have been a little bit older. She would have been in like her mid to late 20s
and that
by then.
bitchy stigma still follows you.
Following her around.
Yeah.
So this time the rumoured feuding is about a rift between Alyssa and Shannen, both kind of fighting for the friendship of Holly. And it's that classic thing, like three's a crowd, I guess. So you've got 3 main characters. And again, there's all of this competitiveness, which who knows how true that was or how much more that was fueled by tabloids and things. But that's like another TV show with a notable female cast where there was fighting
friction,
on set.
Absolutely.
There's so many examples like that. It's kind of annoying. I don't know.
Why can't we be a sisterhood? Why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we need to have to, one has to be better than the other?
But I'm an apologist for women above everything else. But I do think that part of it is the landscape of gossip blogs and, you know, news articles. And you would have really problematic articles in the tabloids, like who's the skinniest out of these women, or who's got the best body, if all of that is always happening, you're going to start feeling that personally as well.
Oh,
behind
absolutely.
that. But it does suck because it just plays into that narrative that like women are catty or like, you know, women are bitchy, whatever. Yeah, more tensions on set on Charmed as well. And then in 2001, Shannen leaves the show. So after just 3 seasons, or at least that's the story at the time in 2001, is that Shannen, you know, had enough of the fighting and made the decision to leave the show. But in 2023, Shannen came out saying she actually was fired.
Oh.
Yeah, that was just the story that went out.
Oh, wow.
And she was just expected to kind of run with it. This is where things get messy again, even though it's been like 2 decades since all of this happened. Shannen alleges that it was Alyssa Milano who got her fired from the show. And apparently Holly also backs this story up, because Holly recalls that one of the show's producers basically told her that Alyssa had threatened to sue the production company over a hostile work environment, and kind of gave them an ultimatum and was like, it's me or Shannen, and they chose her.
Oh yeah.
So that was like the goss that came out 2 decades later.
That's so sad, because I mean, like, even you just said, oh well, some people don't get another chance. It didn't sound like she got a proper chance either.
Yeah, she didn't really. And I think after this she started just doing like little movies here and there, but I don't think, outside of the reboots at least, I don't think Shannen Doherty was like a main lead in another. I can't recall her in anything substantial. No, neither can I. And when I was looking through her series and movies and stuff that she'd done, the ones that I have seen were all around that 90210 Charmed era. Like Heathers, that movie was like one that I've seen her
actually
in as
I don't even know that movie.
With Winona Ryder.
What happens in it? It doesn't
movie
ring
night.
a bell.
Movie night after this.
No, I don't know it, but I feel like we're going to watch it tonight.
Yeah, we should watch it. It's a good movie.
Okay.
We'll watch it. So Alyssa Milano denied everything. She says that she didn't have any kind of power to get someone fired. So what is it?
Yeah, so who's telling the truth?
Exactly. I do think it's interesting that Rose McGowan kind of took over the lead role after Shannen was let go, and Rose and Alyssa also fought on set as well. So I'm like, okay, so it wasn't just Shannen. Like, there's another constant, in the Charmed feuding at least.
Yeah, I just feel like Alyssa took on the Jenny Garth role from... there's always got to be one person, the dominant one, who, in a trio of three is always, the playmaker.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking about everything I kind of learned about Shannen Doherty, looking into her, and I don't think she's completely guilt-free. Like, I do think, like you said, she had that intensity. I think she was someone where if you, like, rubbed her the wrong way, she would tell you as much.
Yeah. She'd bite back.
Yeah, she seemed like she had a bit of bite to her. As I mentioned, there were, stories of her having brawls on nights out. This is actually quite interesting. So one of her fiancés, I don't think they ever got married in the end, was Dean Factor. And he is the great-grandson of Max Factor.
Oh,
the,
wow.
like, beauty...
The beauty empire.
The beauty mogul. I feel so stupid. I did not know Max Factor was a person. I thought Max Factor, it was just called that because it gives you like the it factor to the maximum. Did you know Max Factor's a
no,
person?
I didn't.
Yeah.
So that's a interesting fun fact.
That is a name. But in my mind, it would just... Anyway, that's so irrelevant to what I'm about to tell you, which is that... This is so unimportant, but Dean Factor filed a restraining order against Shannen Doherty for like extreme physical violence, and his story is that she like attempted to kill him multiple times.
What?
I know. So he alleges that she tried to run him over. There was another story that she tried to shoot him.
Okay, but that's just their fiery nature. That's just the crazy, when they're angry, you best get out of the way.
But like that kind of painted her in a different light. I did find like a People magazine article from 1993 that reported the exclusive story on this, and it didn't paint her in a great light at all, but it did kind of mention that maybe this wasn't quite true. Well, like her dad, who obviously is super biased, but Shannon's dad did say like he doesn't think, her dad didn't believe any of the stuff that Dean Factor was saying. And I don't want to do that thing where you like don't believe male victims just because they're men and you're like, why couldn't you overpower her? It was just something that was quite intense and a little bit more than just like her and Jenny Garth scrapping on set, Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think she was purely innocent, but
yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty. Maybe I'll link the 1993 article.
I don't know, just feuds from that era don't seem so heavy. I don't know. How do I describe it? It seems, it's not innocent, but...
I think I know what you're trying to say. Like, she was literally one of the bad girls of the 90s, and we look at her feuding on set, and it was telling Tori to break up with her abusive boyfriend and doing a little prank on Jenny Garth.
Yeah.
And fighting a little bit with Alyssa Milano. Or maybe not always seeing eye to eye with her.
Yeah. And coming to work late, which made everybody wait, which like seemed like, oh, such a drama back then, because like, who does she think she is?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right.
She's not the alpha. Why does she come late? Like, she's all that.
And that was like enough to label her the bad girl of the 90s.
Yeah. She didn't do anything really bad.
Yeah, outside of the stuff with Dean Factor, that's like and I don't know, I just don't trust him, but that's because I don't trust rich people. Like that level of rich, like his great granddad would be like billionaire status easily.
Yeah, because money can pay for a lot of hush money.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Is that like your kind of final thoughts on this, I guess? That...
Yeah, well, after listening to some of your other heavier episodes and the feuding that goes on, I'm just thinking like it's like soft feuding.
Mm-hmm.
Also the fact that you haven't dropped the F-bomb this whole time. And I don't know if it's because of me, but...
Mum hates when I swear on the podcast.
And every time, like, well, you know, it's kind of a little bit like when I started watching Game of Thrones and I watched the first couple of eps and I remember saying to you, like, I can't do it. There's too much violence. It's too disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
The content is too much for me. I can't handle it. And you kind of encouraged me to just bear with it, to just keep going. And so I did. I ended up watching all the eps. You know, you just become like a bit immune to it. And you, like when you first started podcasting and you kept dropping the F-bomb, I'd be like,
so dramatic.
I'd jump a little bit. I'm like, oh, Katya, stop swearing, I would say to myself. Don't need to swear. But then now it's just like part of your podcasting language, I guess. You know, in some situations it is warranted. I just would do it offline. So thank you for not swearing.
Oh my gosh.
I think I probably swore them more than you.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. I can go an episode without swearing.
God.
But you're right. Maybe it's also because the content actually in this biggest bad girl of the 90s was actually not that big a deal. Like we've seen way worse, and we've definitely covered way worse than this.
I don't know. That was for me. So I'm not sure whether someone else my age in another part of the world had a different experience or doesn't feel the same. But I just feel like the feuds in that era, they're a bit soft compared to P. Diddy. That's going down.
Yeah. Well, pipe up actually though, if you are listening to this and you were, you know, similar age to my mum, and what was your perception? Were you already at the time thinking like, this isn't such a big deal, or were you like, whoa, like that Shannen Doherty's a bit of work?
Yeah.
Like she seems like a bit of a bitch.
Like for us that was like, whoa, she's such a bitch. But then actually we got schooled what actual bitches look like.
My generation came along and we were like, double it.
Yeah.
Those are kind of what were my final thoughts. Were just, I found it really difficult to tease out how much was like actual perception and just tabloid driven perception, because obviously, like you said, there was not a lot of internet presence at the time, and so a lot of these articles that I relied on were just reiterating what was said in print magazines at the time, which you know, loved to hype stuff up and loved to pit women against each other. So it was similar to the Betty Davis Joan Crawford feud in that way to me, where I really couldn't tell what was actual drama and what was perceived or amped up drama. And I will say, just mentioned last year, Shannen Doherty did unfortunately pass away from breast cancer, and she was just 53 years old, so super young. But before her death, she had pretty much like made amends with everyone that she had, you know, feuded with in the past, except for maybe Alyssa Milano. But
it's saying something, maybe.
All the 90210 cast members had been on her podcast, you know, had revisited their drama. Jenny Garth and Tori Spelling had obviously done that reboot and invited her back on to play Brenda, and she'd accepted. So I think, like you said, like it actually wasn't that deep, and it was really like played up. because when we look at the people involved, she did work with Aaron Spelling again. She did reconnect with Tori Spelling, Jenny Garth, all those women again, and they were fine. And she said it was actually really nice doing the 2019 reboot because they came back as adults and they could talk about everything that happened when they were kids from that sort of adult perspective, and it was really like insightful to unpack some of those things that were a big deal to them back then, but now I guess they had that perspective, which is also nice. I'm glad that she didn't kind of go out with all of these feuds still.
Yeah. No, I think when you are dealt, in terminal illness in life, for you to go peacefully, the best would be to make amends, I would feel.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, that is all that I have on the feud. Do you have anything else that you want to say?
No.
Do you want to tell people where they can find you on socials?
Don't find me on socials. I'm not a podcaster, and actually don't find me on socials. I only just started an Instagram so I could follow people.
You don't want to plug your TikTok?
Not really.
No.
Because my TikTok account is, I started it for other reasons, and I'm not sure what to do about the TikTok.
We're on a hiatus while you figure out your rebrand.
That's right.
For your TikTok. That's okay. We'll do some...
Watch this space.
Yeah, we'll do some content strategizing, and then we'll plug that when she is ready for you.
In the meantime, don't try and find me.
Well, thank you everyone so much for listening, and thank you so much for coming on, Mum. I might have to have you back. We'll think of another feud to cover.
Okay.
Now that you've had your induction episode.
I know, super nervous. Hope you don't have to do too much editing.
Don't forget to follow the show and leave a rating if you do enjoy it. You can also leave a written review. I love my words of affirmation. And you can follow me on socials at Mood for Feud. I hope everyone is crushing their goals this week. And of course, keeping out of trouble. Don't get into any feuds. And I will talk to you all next week.
Bye! Always wanted to do the bye.